All right, all right, all right. Hey, Colin, what did the Ramones say?
The Ramones said, "Hey ho, let's go."
Let's go. Welcome to episode 0 of Legends and Losers.
So fired up to start this podcast with you, man.
Thanks, Colin. I certainly wouldn't be here without you. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in, of course. And I want to thank Colin right off the top. Colin has been, I'll say it nicely, encouraging me for a year to do this with him. And we finally got off the dime, and here we are.
I mean, kicking you in the ass.
Yeah, no shit. And I've been dragging my ass. And, it's interesting, Colin. A big motivation for me is, as you know, I retired not long after the book I co-authored, Play Bigger, came out. And one of the cool things about doing that was I have had time. The book came out in the midway point of 2016. And, I had time to interact with so many people. And I get emails and tweets and LinkedIn's and pretty much daily from somebody around the world who has questions or wants to just wants to talk about the concepts in the book. And many of them say, hey, we want more. How do we get more? And so at least for me, this podcast in part is the answer to that question, to stoke entrepreneurship and innovation, and to bring category design and the concepts of Play Bigger to the world. That's a big part of it. And, hopefully we can create a platform for entrepreneurs and innovators, dreamers, pirates of all types to have a dialogue about entrepreneurship, to have a dialogue about making your place in the world, either for your company or yourself.
Yes.
And hopefully have a lot of fun doing it, right?
Well, that's the name of the game. This podcast must be fun.
Well, look, we think we're pretty funny, don't we?
Well, we think we're hysterical. The question is, does anyone else think we're as funny as we think we are?
Yeah, well, if the world thinks we're as funny as we are, then we'll be the next Robin Williams. And if the world thinks we're as funny as my wife Carrie does, then this will be our last episode. She thinks we're buffoons, just to be clear. So, hey, Colin, let's talk a little bit. You've got a great background from professional master photographer to entrepreneur. Why don't you share with people a little bit about your journey?
Sure. So I started my career as a web application developer during the first go round of the internet, back when Netscape had a fire-breathing dragon on their website. Was when I started developing web applications, and I had an incredible...
So we're talking the early 90s, right?
Yes.
Early mid-ish 90s.
Yeah. And had an incredible career early on until everything fell apart in 2001.
Yeah, they threw us out of the bar and turned the lights off.
Yeah, and the floor fell out from underneath almost everyone in San Francisco. And so at that time I took a deep breath. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but I had a passion for photography. And so I made the jump to professional photographer, and it was not an easy transition. I had identified as a web application developer for a long time. I took a lot of pride in that. And then it was hard for me just to say one day, well, now I'm a photographer. And it actually took quite a while to feel comfortable saying that. And,
but what a legendary photographer you are. I mean, almost everything I know about photography, you've taught me. And, you have this wonderful perspective about photography.
I do.
Do you want to share that with people?
Of course. So my point of view around photography is that photographers enjoy the world from a visual standpoint more than other people. And it's because they see things that other people don't, and they notice more beauty and more light and more contrast and more clouds and more patterns and things about their daily life that they appreciate as art more than other people do who don't appreciate photography or who aren't necessarily artists, visual artists in that respect.
Not to sound too corny or like maybe I've been living on the West Coast for too long or something, but I never saw clouds before you. Yeah. So, I mean, you certainly taught me a lot about how to look at the world, whether I happen to be through a lens or not.
Well, it's interesting because thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. It's working with you as a friend and as a coach as a photography coach has been very satisfying. And you're actually a very gifted photographer.
Well, thank you. I'm very technical, as you know.
And well, yeah, not so much there. That's why the iPhone was really good for you.
Yeah, a point and click, really. And then you've made the transition to entrepreneur. And
Yes.
so you're a co-founder of this wonderful company, Equity Directory, with your partner, the magnificent Lisa McGill.
Correct. Yes. Equity Directory is an invite-only network for entrepreneurs and startup talent exchanging work for equity. And Lisa's an incredible co-founder. Very happy to be working with her.
And, I'm stoked to have you with me on this journey on Legends and Losers, because you and I share something in common. It's a big motivation for me in wanting to do the show is there is a crisis going on right now in American entrepreneurship. And it's interesting, as you well know, but I live in Santa Cruz, California, not very close to Silicon Valley, or very close to Silicon Valley, not far. And I spent the better part of 20 years in Silicon Valley, and you live in the East Bay, and so we're both in Silicon Valley or close to Silicon Valley and in that world. And so living here in Northern California, you'd never think that there's a decline in entrepreneurship. And yet the Wall Street Journal last year wrote a story based on some MIT research with that headline, "There's a crisis in American entrepreneurship." And I was just reading, there's an Economist story that came out last September about how more and more mega companies, or what we call category kings in the book Play Bigger, are emerging. And in there, they look at some research. I just wanted to read this for folks.
Sure.
This is from The Economist in September. Quote, "Startups, meanwhile, have found it harder to get off the ground. Robert Leetan of the Council on Foreign Relations and Ian Hathaway of the Brookings Institution note that the number of startups is lower than at any time since the late 1970s, and that more companies die than are born." And so
that blows me away. It really does. I have a hard time believing that.
It doesn't seem right. You and I live in a world where it feels like everybody is an entrepreneur. But that's not the case. And now millennials are forecasted to be the least entrepreneurial generation in American history. And in the last 6 months, I've had this aha about entrepreneurship. I've spent most of my career in Silicon Valley working with big time companies, trying to go public and become category kings and dominate our spaces and so forth, well-funded companies and the like. And the aha that I've had is in Silicon Valley, we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are, if you will, way up entrepreneurs, big E entrepreneurs.
Sure.
So if you think about a Zuckerberg as an example, he's going to school at Harvard and then starts Facebook. And of course, the rest is history. And my guess is if Facebook doesn't work, Mark probably and the rest of his co-founders and early folks probably don't miss a meal. And so for them, Facebook is a way up, so to speak. And that's a great motivation. The interesting thing that you and I share is you and I are both what you might think of as small E entrepreneurs, started with really nothing and bootstrapped from nothing. And, for me, Colin, I was 18. I got thrown out of school, and I was either going to have a manual labor job as an orderly, so it was shave guys' balls over here, or, start a tech company with my dear friend, Jack. Hi, Jack. Hello, Mr. Vincent. Yes, my name's Christopher, and I'm your orderly. I'm here to shave you. And most guys would say, "Oh, no, I don't need to shave, thanks." And I said,
it's not an option.
Not where I'm going to shave you, I don't think. And I'll tell you, you have a man's full attention.
When you have a razor in one hand and his balls in the other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very, very focusing. But for me, as a kid with no education, no contacts, no money, no experience in anything. I mean, no. It's funny.
No mentors.
Not when I started, other than my dear friend Jack, who was a year older than me and he'd been in business, so he was my mentor. But just a year older, and so for me, entrepreneurship was a way out, not a way up.
Yeah.
a way out of, maybe not poverty, but certainly a way out of struggle. And I always had that feeling like there was something more for me, like I think you had. And so when I read about this decline in American entrepreneurship, also as an immigrant to the United States, I was born and raised in Canada. I just look at it and go, there's got to be something that we can do to make a difference for people who want to be entrepreneurial, whether it's actually they want to be entrepreneurs or they want to be more entrepreneurial in aspects of their life or their career. And so a huge motivation for me doing this podcast is, can we create a platform for people to have authentic dialogue about what it takes to create and design and dominate both in their work and in their lives?
Well, of course, that's something that I think is the part of the American dream in some respect, is to create a life for yourself that you wouldn't be able to in most other parts of the world.
Well, and Canada is a great country. I mean, had I stayed home in Canada, things would have been just great, I'm sure. But even that said, for me, moving to the United States and coming to Silicon Valley, there are opportunities here that there weren't at home in Canada. And so the fact that as an immigrant, you can come here, or as a native born American, you can be here and you can really start with nothing and make something of yourself. That dream is a very powerful dream. And it's a reality that can be had in the US, certainly in Canada and a handful of other countries around the world, but it's not a reality that can be had everywhere. That's for damn sure. And so look, this might sound corny, but it breaks my heart that entrepreneurship is at such an epic low, because we need entrepreneurs. We need the big E entrepreneurs, the Zuckerbergs of the world, the Larry Ellisons of the world, the Mark Benioffs of the world, to build those kinds of companies. And we also need the small E entrepreneurs, because they create jobs and they create a better life. And so our goal really is, can we create a platform at Legends and Losers to have some fun, talk about innovation, talk about entrepreneurship, talk about technology, talk about startups, and on a personal level, talk about, how do we make our dreams come true and how do we connect that to our work life?
Well, one of the things that has always stuck with me ever since I met you, and just for the audience, Chris and I met about 9 or 10 years ago now. And
we met in a bar, which is where, men should meet.
Now, to be fair, it was a bar in Alpine Meadows after an incredible day of powder skiing.
Yes. The best place to meet for sure is at a mountain bar after a great day in POW.
So the stoke was at an all-time high.
Yes, very high.
And so just I want to share a little bit about that day before I share what I wanted to share. And so
hey, it's your show. You can do whatever you want. For
the audience, I'm at the bar. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 friends with me. We've had an incredible day, and we're sitting down at this table. And the next table over is Christopher with about 4 or 5 other friends, and he's showing them these photo books that were printed by Apple. And the thing that I really noticed was, or what stood out to me, was that they were clearly professional photos, and they were of really tropical, incredible waves. And so most people's Apple photo books are just kind of shitty pictures of their family. And these were professional photos of incredible waves. And so as a photographer and a surfer, I couldn't stop looking over at your table, and your enthusiasm was infectious. And so I had to literally interrupt you in the middle of a conversation and tap your shoulder and say, "Excuse me, I'm a photographer and a surfer, and I couldn't help but to notice your awesome books. Do you mind if I have a look?" And you turn and and it was like you were my best friend from the first moment we met. And literally, I think it was like maybe a few minutes into that conversation, you said, "What are you doing tonight for dinner?" And I said, "I don't know, but I got like 4 dudes with me." And you called your wife now, Carrie, and said, "Carrie, do we have room for 5 more?" And she said, "Yeah." And you said, "Great, you're coming to my house for dinner tonight." And I turned to my friends and I said, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And we all came over to your house for dinner, and it was awesome. And we've been best friends ever since. And one of the things, so that's the story, that's the context. But what I was getting at originally here was that you really helped me understand that you can create and design your life. And I really had never heard that before. And that's something that you've inspired me to do and supported me in doing ever since we met. And I just can't thank you enough for that.
Well, you're welcome. And it's something that I learned early in life, and this will be a topic for another show, but I actually met the biggest mentor I had at that time very recently after 30 years. But that'll be a story for another day. But yeah, when I was young, a teenager, I was very conflicted. School was very challenging for me. I found out later when I got thrown out of school at 18 for being stupid. I found out later at 21 I was dyslexic. So school was really hard. And, God bless my mother, Jackie, as math and science and geography and all these things were shutting for me. She was able to find a fine arts school where the curriculum was 50% music, art, and drama. And so those creative worlds open up for me as sort of the mathematical or more analytical worlds were shutting down for me. And so I had this, it was really felt like an angel and a devil on each shoulder, on one hand, I was afraid people were going to find out I was stupid because of the dyslexia. I didn't know that at the time. But I felt like I did have some talent, and I knew I had a lot of drive. And so I had an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. That the angel, the voice of the angel was my grandfather, Jack, saying to me, "Oh, you're the bestest boy in the world," with his Scottish accent. I really only do one Scottish accent. It's kind of like a drunk Mrs. Doubtfire. And then the devil's voice was my mom, Jackie's voice, saying, "You're going to grow up and be a bum." And I remember feeling like I had to make a decision. And it was then that I really started on this mission of, well, if I'm not going to be a bum, if I'm going to be the man that my grandfather says I am, how do you do that? Because it was very clear to me that if I just stayed on I would kind of stayed unconscious, if you will, and stayed on the path that I was on, that I wasn't going to do that. And so I knew I had to I didn't have those words at the time, but I knew I had to stop, take inventory of myself and decide what the fuck was I going to do, And I was also incredibly lucky that my friend Jack Hughes, bless you, Jack, and all my Hugheses in Vancouver, Canada. He got me into business, and I didn't know shit from Shinola, and he had to teach me how to tie a tie. But he wanted to start a technology company, and he asked for my help, and he finally convinced me to. And so early on, I learned that you could design your life,
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because marketing is one of your strong points, and your name's Christopher Lochhead, and your partner's name was Jack what?
Hughes.
Okay, but your business was called
Roger Pierce et Associés.
Who the hell is Roger and who the hell is Pierce?
Yeah, so when Jack and I started, I was 18, he was 19. We thought, well, who the fuck is going to buy anything from us? So we thought, well, we got to do a bunch of stuff to look more, in the parlance of our times, legit.
And wow, Roger Pierce sounds legit as fuck.
Yeah, well, so we grew beards to look older, and we tried to buy one suit. I remember I knew shit about suits. I'll never forget a sales call with a fucking tag still on my arm, and this woman looking at me like I was the biggest loser in history. But anyway, when it came to naming the company, we thought, well, what are we going to name this company? And we thought, well, because we're young and no one's going to take us seriously, we thought, well, we need to sound a lot bigger than we are, right? So there was a TV show on at the time called Remington Steele.
Of course.
And if you remember, the premise for the show was there was a woman who had founded a private investigation agency, but she thought nobody's going to hire her because she's a woman. Shows you how much times have changed, right? And so she thought, well, I'm going to make up a guy. So she named the agency Remington Steele, and then she hires a guy to be Remington Steele, and he actually works for her. And of course, the guy that played Remington Steele was none other than Pierce Brosnan, who went on to be James Bond. Anyway, so that show was on, it was popular, and we thought, hey, that's a great idea. what if we make up a guy? So we did. We took Pierce Brosnan's name. We thought, Pierce, that's really strong. And we were in Montreal, so we needed a name that sounded like it could be French and English.
Okay.
So that's why you get Roger, not Roger.
Okay.
And the company's name was Roger Pierce et Associés, Roger Pierce and Associates. And we had these business, cool looking business cards that said partner on them, or associé in French. And, we would show up at these meetings, Jack and I, and give them these business cards. And people just assumed there was like some 55-year-old guy named Roger Pierce back at the ranch who was in charge.
Of course.
And whenever anybody would call, because people would call and ask for him, of course, we'd always say, we need the same answer, because if we make an answer up every time, we're going to get caught, right? So we said, okay, well, whenever anyone calls and asks for Roger, we'll just tell them that he's in Geneva. And, so he's in Geneva. Can I help you? If you were named Roger Pierce, you'd be in Geneva, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but see, the thing is, like, what if they called back next time and he's still in Geneva?
It's a very long meeting. It's a very strategic pact he's trying to negotiate.
Did you guys ever get caught with your pants down on that one?
No, funnily enough, we told very few people that he wasn't real. And most people after the first meeting never really asked much. It's funny. People they just assumed whatever they assumed, and we just kept building the business. So
it's a great name. I mean, come on. It's way better than the alternative.
Oh, Roger Pierce is, and I have a very warm spot in my heart for Roger, and I still have every office I've been in. I have the coffee cup coaster that we originally had as a corporate giveaway, and so I still have that in my office, and it's still the same one from literally 30 years ago.
Well, if I recall, you started that business with the Yellow Pages and a telephone.
Yeah, I mean, just like how you and Lisa have bootstrapped Equity Directory with not much. In our case, Jack and I had nothing. At least you guys have been able to raise a friends and family round to get the party started.
Yeah.
In our case, we wouldn't even know what a friends and family round was. And so, literally, with a little bit of money that Jack had saved and money that I had made from nut shaving. We bought a computer and we set up in a little funny incubator space in a teeny weeny little office. And one computer, one phone, a landline, and the Yellow Pages. And we started off with the Yellow Pages cold calling.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
It's a great story because the movie ended well for our hero. But in the beginning, it wasn't. It's funny. I saw this question on Quora recently that I answered that I couldn't help myself with. And the question was something to the effect of, what do you do as a failed entrepreneur when you can't get hired?
Yeah.
And my response or you're unemployable, that was the word. And my opening line to my response to that question was, I was unemployable before I became an unemployable entrepreneur. Because unfortunately, Roger Pierce did great for a little while and then did really not great. And so after about 3 years in, we were on the verge of bankruptcy, and Jack and I had to shut the thing down and take the debt, cut it in half, and pay everybody back. And I did pay everybody back. I paid everybody back in a year. My friend Johnny, God bless you, Johnny Dyer, he lent me half of what I owed, and I got a bank loan for the other half. It was $6,000. It felt like $6 million. And the bank manager could only justify a loan to me of $3 million. He's like, look, Chris, you got no money, you got no assets, you don't have a car, they're killing me to give you this $3 grand. I'm out on a limb. I can't. I was like, well, his name was Ron. I'll never forget him, Ron Terenzio, the Royal Bank of Canada. And Ron was kind to me, but I still had $3 grand and I was in the hole. And Johnny lent me his life savings and some inheritance that he'd gotten. And I paid Ron and Johnny back with interest. I paid Johnny the same interest rate that I was paying Ron, and paid him back in a year. And I was lucky enough, even though I was an unemployable entrepreneur, to get a job at another startup and begin to dig myself out.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of integrity in that, Chris, that I have to applaud.
Well, thank you. And I think, look, a lot of us just try to do the right thing because it's the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And I, like you, came from a great family. We didn't have much money, but we had a lot of love. And you know, my mom and dad and grandparents made sure I understood the difference between right and wrong. And, you know, tried to live up to that ever since.
Yeah. Well, another thing that you mentioned frequently is, I think it's a quote from Kevin Spacey, is that when you get to the penthouse, you have an obligation to send the elevator back down.
Yeah, it's a great quote. And there was another discussion I had recently. I'm you know, a reasonably active guy, and I'll be 49 in May. And so when you're as active as I am and you're at the age that I'm at, shit breaks down. And so I've been lucky enough to find a legendary guy named Manny Camara. He's the founder of Myo Technology, and he's the best body worker I've ever been connected to. And he tunes me up normally once a week. Anyway, I was with Manny not long ago, and he was doing some work on my fucked up knee. And he's a couple years older than me, but not too many, in his early 50s, I think. And he made a comment that really resonated with me, which was, he said, and he's a genius. He's a guy that has learned many different disciplines in body work and kind of fused them together to create a new discipline that he calls mixed method recovery. And he's a genius. Anyway, so he said to me how he's come to this place where he feels like the first 50 years of his life were about learning his craft and kind of putting everything together and creating this kind of new field that he's really the category designer of. And now that he's in his early 50s, the second part of his life is really, he wants to give this to the world. And that really resonated with me, Colin.
Sure.
You know, I'm incredibly lucky enough to have been able to retire at a pretty young age and to have done some fun shit in my life. And I really do have that strong desire now to try to make a difference on the back nine, so to speak. Not that I'm a golfer, but I'm clearly not on the front nine. Or is there a front nine? I don't know what the fuck that's what they call it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, the interesting thing about that is you say, okay, well, if you were somebody who had a bunch of cool ideas and, you know, in my case, wrote a book and wanted to share those with the world, but more importantly, like you and I want to create a platform for dialogue around entrepreneurship and innovation and finding your place in the world. You know, how would you do that? In the old days, you know, you'd get on a plane and you'd give speeches and you'd probably keep writing books and stuff. And, you know, I know you give speeches. You're a celebrated TEDx speaker and so forth. But in the new world, you say, well, yeah, you could do all those things. And you and I both do some of those things. But in the new world, the way I think you make a difference is you do a podcast.
Yep.
And that may sound crazy, but you know, two dudes. I got two dudes and a microphone,
and some Jack,
and a very big bottle of Jack. And we're doing Jack and Cokes. Thank you to our friends at Jack Daniels. Feel free to send us free shit. We like the Sinatra. But you do a podcast because this is the way that you can reach the world today, and hopefully interact and create a set of dialogues with some cool people.
Well, the thing I really appreciate about podcasting is that it's not just a radio show or a TV show. It's an interactive, living, breathing thing that we can really involve the audience in. And we've already started the Facebook group, which we'll talk about at the end, and we'll give you the address. But just starting the Facebook group alone has been so inspiring to see how many people, your friends and my friends, that are behind this and supporting us in this mission.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing because, you know, we were pretty sure we wanted to do it. And we got some advice from our friend Maddie A, who runs a legendary podcast. And Maddie said to us, well, you know, include your friends on social media. And so I put a post up a couple months ago now, maybe a little over a month ago, maybe. Mm-hmm. And sort of saying, hey, thinking about starting a podcast, you know, do you think I should do this? And I've never had any kind of response like that to anything, even to, co-authoring a best-selling book. The response was overwhelming. And I thought, holy shit. And the other experience I had that really woke me up to the power of being able to connect with people in this way. Our dear friend Tim Rode. Do you want to tell people who Timmy is? Tim.
Tim. Tim is an incredible man, incredible friend, an awesome skier, adventurer, lover of life,
scuba diver.
Tim is as positive as they come. And I remember meeting Tim shortly after we met. And I remember one morning, so just to give you some background, Tim retired after a very successful career as a real estate agent in Manteca.
Which is in the middle part of Northern California.
And Tim was a legendary real estate agent, did very well and retired early right before the crash. He saw it coming, liquidated and cashed out and built a beautiful home in the Sierras. And ever since then, we've been doing a lot of skiing with Tim.
A lot of turns.
And so what's awesome about Tim is this was, I don't know, 7 years ago now. We were on
it all blurs together. It was several jacks ago.
And we were on a chairlift. I remember the exact moment. And we were on Scott Chair at Alpine Meadows, and it was you, Tim, and me. And Tim said, I want to create a program to help the next generation be self-sustaining.
Yep.
And he has ever since that day has been on a mission and a half to create that vision. And not only that one, but the GoBundance, which is another story, but One Life Fully Lived has been an incredible community. And we have both been a part of it. You are now speaking on a regular basis at the conferences. And I remember encouraging my brother to attend because I knew it would help him create a vision for his life that he just didn't have yet.
Yep.
He came back from that conference with granted, you and Tim are personal friends of mine, so the recommendation came with a lot of weight. He drove to Reno. He participated in the event. He came back. He was so fired up. And from that day forward, his life has been incredibly different. And I just can't thank you both enough for that.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm so happy to see Sky doing so well. And so to make it clear for people, Tim's vision with One Life was to create a nonprofit. So One Life Fully Lived is a nonprofit where we help people dream, plan, and live their best life, and give them tools around financial planning, around entrepreneurship, and around personal development and self-actualization, and try to do that as close to free as humanly possible. And so I've been involved, like you have, since the very, very beginning with One Life and this mission. And last year, for a bunch of reasons, I wasn't able to participate in the West Coast One Life conference. But this past year in October, I was. And I gave a talk about category design, which is one of the principal management discipline, the new concept, the new idea in the book Play Bigger. But at a personal level, the book deals mostly with at the business level. In the last chapter, we talk about how you can design your own category in your career. And so for this talk, it was really at the personal level. I was trying to take chapter 10 of the book, and bring it to life. And as I was working on it, what really struck me was, particularly as a young person, but really throughout life, our culture sort of communicates that what there is to do is to try a bunch of different shit and figure out where you fit in the world. And one day you'll find out that, hey, you should be an accountant, or you should be a professional skier, or you should be a painter, or you should be, Dushka Zapata.
Well, there's that book, What Color is Your Parachute?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so the aha that I had was, there's a lot of people for whom they go through that process of growing up and going to school and early in life. I was just with a dear, sort of an adopted niece of mine who's in her mid-20s. and just saw her this weekend, and she's just doing so incredibly well. And she's found her place in the world, and that, she did a corporate job for a while and that didn't work. And then she fucked off and spent a bunch of time being a do-gooder in India. And when she was in India, she was a teacher. And so she found her calling, and she's come back to Northern California, and she's a teacher now. And she just completed her first semester, and she's in her second one now. And Carrie and I saw her on the weekend, and she's just lit up like a Christmas tree, and it was amazing. And so this young woman has found her place in the world, and so there's some meaningful percentage of people where that happens. They thrash around, they do whatever they do, and sooner or later they find the slot that they fit in, and that's great. The other part of it, though, that didn't happen for me. And it turns out that didn't happen for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so as I was trying to communicate what category design meant at an individual level, at a corporate level, it's about creating a new market and dominating that market. And at a personal level, what I realized is this journey to find your place in the world. And if you can, that's great. But some of us never do. And so for those of us who never do, we have to make a place in the world. Because the experience I had as a young man was there isn't a place for me.
Right. And
so to get back to One Life, this past October when I spoke at the Sacramento conference, that was the theme of the talk, was about making your place in the world. And what I realized is a lot more people feel like they grew up on the island of misfit toys than I ever could have imagined.
Well, yeah, it's quite an island, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the thing is that what color is your parachute might end with, I don't have a color on the parachute.
Yeah, no one gave me a parachute, man. We were too fucking poor.
But even if you try to find the color, maybe your color just isn't in the parachute.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. And so with Legends and Losers, it struck me that we are being on a mission called, can we create a platform for dialogue, authentic conversation about how innovators and entrepreneurs can make a difference in the world at the business level and at the personal level, right? Create, design, and dominate in your life, in your business, and in the world. And the other interesting thing about that is, and we could talk about the social impact of this, but we increasingly live in a winner-take-all world. Last year was the first time in recorded history that the top 1% of income earners in the world now have more than 50% of the income in the world, right? That happened last year. Yeah. So on an individual level, it's part of why we wanted to name the show Legends and Losers, right? You're either a legend or you're a loser. And so how do I break into that? How do I break that mold, right? Where so few have so much. How do I break into that? And that's something we got to break the back of. And then, in the business world, category kings, we did some research for the book, and we found out that category kings, that is to say the company that is the dominant player in the space, and more industries are such that one company dominates the category. But in the tech world, the category king gets 76% of the economics. And so how do we compete and how do we win when the world that we live in is more and more of a winner-take-all world?
It's a great question, and something that I hope we can uncover as we build this series, because it's a very important topic.
And then, of course, the other thing we want to hit on with people is, we did name the show Legends and Losers. And it's interesting when you get into people, they get the name right away. And they get that there's no such thing as a legend who isn't a loser.
Can't be a legend without being a loser.
You can't be a legend without being a loser. And the interesting thing, though, is when you read the success books or when you listen to a lot of the podcasts where they interview, whoever the big super ding dong who had got the medal or who built the company and bought the Hawaiian island and, all the good shit. when they recount their success story to you, the impression that I'll speak for myself that I am often left with is that it was sort of up and to the right. You know, I did this and I did that, and I slayed the dragon and saved the princess, and boom, then
it was done.
Exactly. And the truth is, you know, look, maybe there's some people where that's how it fucking went down, but for most people, it's a jagged line of a lot of fucking. There's a lot of in Canada, we call it donuts in the parking lot. You know, the car's spinning around and smashing into shit. And, you know, success is not, there's a lot of outside the line shit going on, right?
Yeah, well, there's a quote that goes, success is about failing in the right direction.
Yeah. And so we also wanted to create a platform where the guests that we have come on are going to share with us, you know, hey, tell us about the shit, right? Tell us about.
Is that the losery shit?
The losery shit. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've been a really big loser in my life. I've failed, you know, many, many times. You know, my first business was a failure, and I had a failure last year that was a heartbreak, and one that I should have known better about. But, you know, those things happen. And, you know, what determines whether or not we're a loser is not, of course, that we lose, is that we make the decision that we're not going to continue to be a loser, right?
And we don't give up.
No. Tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, grit, balls,
courage.
Courage.
These are some of our key words that we're going to explore.
And we got some great guests on all of those things. We have an amazing woman in our first couple shows coming on named Shaku Atre, who over 50 years ago was the first woman in her school to study computer science in India, and come to America and ultimately become one of the most important people in the information technology industry. And so we got Shaku on the show to tell us her story. It's incredible.
Yeah, where she beat down the doors at IBM, right?
And showed up at IBM in the 1970s in Manhattan wearing her sari and was writing code, you know? And so, yeah, I've always resonated deeply, Colin, with, you know, with misfits, with people who are people who the world would bet against. You know, my heart is with, and it's not to say that I don't want to empower people who haven't had struggle, of course. But those who've had some serious struggle, it's really great to see people who are supposedly
our favorite word.
We talk about languaging, but I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a certain element in our world that thinks supposedly is a word. But you know,
it's not?
Yeah, fuck. But that, you know, supposedly aren't going to make it, right? The underdog is certainly the person I relate to, because I was always the underdog. I still am the underdog.
I couldn't agree more. That's definitely a place we connect, and I'm very excited to be on this journey with you.
Well, and Colin, what I love about your story is, you know, you start off as a developer, you have a great career going, and all of a sudden the party ends.
Way ended in 2001. Wow. The lights turned on really brightly at 2 a.m.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, and shit looks different at 2 a.m. all of a sudden when the lights come on in the bar. But, and you had the courage to transform yourself into a very successful master photographer.
Yeah, it was certainly not without a lot of courage, a lot of patience, and it has been an incredible journey pursuing photography on a personal and professional level. It's a real gift, and I certainly love doing it.
And then I know how exciting and thrilling and also terrifying it's been to start Equity Directory on, you know, really not that much money, but with a big dream and a big idea.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have met Lisa McGill, my co-founder at the time.
And still, right?
No, sorry, just to back up. Lisa Russell at the time.
Okay, there we go.
Lisa McGill now. She's been married since we started the company together. She has a wonderful husband. Mark, just a shout out to you for being a superstar. We love you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
And Lisa is she's a very special person in my life, and I met her a year ago or 2 years ago, and we've been really we've been cranking ever since, and developed an incredible working relationship that I value tremendously, and couldn't be happier to be working with her.
And then the other thing we want to talk about, some incredibly serious topics, like what is the correct plural of Prius?
That was a hard left turn.
It was.
We remember talking about Lisa and co-founding companies to the Prius. Like,
yeah, well,
what?
Hey, do you like pancakes?
How about a waffle? Where's the zebra?
So years ago, a gal who worked with me called discussions with the Attention Deficit Theater. So welcome to Attention Deficit Theater.
Well, you must have been the star of that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a show that anybody wanted to watch, but yeah. So I don't know what the plural of Prius is. And when you're going real fast in the fast lane, the left lane, which is not a cruising lane, America, it's always not always, but it's almost always a Prii driver
going 45 miles an hour in the fast lane.
Yeah, and I ain't going 45. I'm going some material number higher than that.
Crawling up your ass, real.
Yes. So we have to educate the world. We're on a mission. This is actually what the podcast is really about. We'll just declare the actual intention, which is to get people to get the fuck out of the left-hand lane and, have some class and let us pass.
That's our real mission, right?
That's what this is all about for me. I'm a retired bastard with a really fast car, and I need you to get the fuck out of my way, California. Amen. Hallelujah.
So wait, there's another word that causes you confusion on the plural, which is, what is that one?
Elvis.
Oh, right.
What's the plural of Elvis? Because as you know, Elvis is an industry now. It's a category. And if you spend any time in Vegas, what you know is Elvis doesn't seem right to me. I want to say Elvi.
But why?
I don't know. Elvi just sounds, I don't know, maybe a little funnier.
It is funnier. I don't know if it's right, but
it's like when you use it in a sentence, it's great. It's like, hey, look at all the Elvi coming right at us.
I guarantee you nobody who's in Vegas watching them fall out of the sky would say that.
Here come the Elvi. They're coming down right on us.
But if you said that, everyone would fall apart laughing.
Yeah, well, they would know. I mean, I want to. They
would know how funny that is.
I think we should popularize Elvi.
I think you're right. Elvi that drive Prii.
Elvi in the Prii. Yeah, if you were an Elvi in a Prii, I'll give you $1,000 if you're the Elvi in the Prii.
They should do like a clown car with the Elvi and the Prii.
And I've always wanted. My wife won't let me do it. I have this Halloween costume in my head where I'm an Elvis Jesus. So, think Elvis in the white suit with, you get the fake hair going and stuff. And then you put on the Jesus wig with the beard and stuff. And so you got the chains, the Elvis chains. And so you're in the Elvis costume with the Jesus hair and beard, and you're Elvis Jesus or Jesus Elvis. Now, I guess you got to be Jesus Elvis.
Or how about
Jesus first, right?
How about Elvis? Right? Because it's Elvis, Jesus, it's Elvis.
Maybe it could be G-Vi.
G-Vi?
Don't you think Jesus should come first? I mean, Elvis was the king, but Jesus is Jesus.
Fair enough.
I mean,
but Jesus?
G-Vel, G-Vi.
Jesus is...
Yeah, what is the plural of Jesus? Is it Jesus or Jesus is?
There's only one. So
I know, but if like multiple people at a party were dressed up as Jesus, would you say those are the G-Vi? Or those are the Jesuses? Jesus. Say Jesus 12 times.
Do you really want me to do that?
No. I don't even want me to do that. Nobody wants us to do that.
But I think that Elvi and the Prii going to see Jesus at church makes a lot of sense.
That's Hey, we should organize that. Maybe that could be a national holiday.
Church of Jesus.
Now, and I'd also have to find out, I am a card carrying
Here we go.
Dudist priest. So
Yeah.
I need to make sure. I'm pretty sure that goes with the Dudism religion.
Of course it does.
For those of you who don't know, there's a religion founded based on the teachings of the Big Lebowski called Dudism. It's dudism.com or dudism.org. And I think it takes all of 15 seconds to become a Dudist minister. You fill out a form, and I think you have to promise to abide.
Of course you do.
But hey, I have performed 3 legit, in the parlance of our times, marriage services as a Dudist minister.
How great is that?
Yeah, by the power invested in me by the Church of the Latter-day Dude, I now pronounce you married to each other.
And that really is for real.
Well, the great thing about America, of course, is we have the constitutional right to religious freedom. And so if you set up a religion and you do all the right governmental things to, qualify as a 16, 35, 24, 31, I don't know what, nonprofit religion, then you can found a religion based on worshiping your cat's toe, and there's nobody can criticize you for that in America. And so yeah, it's great that we have a quote legit religion predicated on the teaching.
As you say in some of your speeches, but I digress.
But we digress. So I think with that, we're probably done with episode 0 of Legends and Losers. We've probably tortured people enough.
I think so.
Do we want to tease them a little bit, Colin, about what's coming in the real first episode?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So tell them who we got in episode 1.
So episode 1 is Dushka Zapata, who's an incredible and legendary core writer. But you also, before she started writing on Quora, she had an incredible career as a PR expert, right? As in PR.
And I love so many things about Dushka, but she's really somebody who's reinvented herself and somebody who waited for the world to provide the right platform. And when the world did, in her case, it was Quora, man, did it ever work. And so she's episode 1. And we also wanted to do something a little different in episode 1. I think a lot of people might have expected, particularly from guys like you and I, that the first person we'd have on the show would be an entrepreneur, big-time venture capitalist. And we got a lot of those coming, believe me. We got VCs, entrepreneurs, athletes, writers, just incredible people coming. But we wanted to start off with something a little bit more personal. Dushka shares a story about her dad. She does a reading for us, and really touch on the personal part of personal life and category design as a way to get episode 1 started, and to do something maybe a little bit unpredictable from what most people might have thought we would do.
Yeah, well, she's a wonderful guest, and I'm looking forward to having her on again.
Yeah, and then after that, we got some great industry leaders. We got Ray Wong with us, who's the #1 analyst in the world.
Adam Honig from
go ahead.
Spiro HQ.
Yep, Spiro. I love the tagline, and I'm biased because I had something to do with it. But Spiro is the sales app for salespeople who want to make more money.
Brilliant. And then we have Shaku Atre.
Yeah, one of the absolute pioneers in the business technology realm. She studied engineering 50 years ago in India, and ultimately became an entrepreneur and an author. And she shares our story and shares her story and gives us some great advice and some incredible insight. And then we have one of the most important thought leaders in the technology industry, Bob Evans, with us.
Bob was wonderful. That was this morning. Really, really happy about that.
And we have Ann Mirakou and Mike Maples Jr., the co-founders of Floodgate Capital, one of the most important venture capital firms, coming up shortly after our first couple shows. and much more after that. Some great athletes, some fighters, we hope to get we're working on a couple farmers to come on to the show. And you'll also be introduced to why the dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, how that incredible animal is actually, unlike popular belief, still amongst us today.
Really?
Why the T-Rex is everywhere on the earth today. And it turns out T-Rexes are incredible pets, so we'll be getting into that a lot. We'll have some visits to some T-Rexes.
Can I get a pet T-Rex?
Absolutely, you can get a pet T-Rex. Anybody who wants one can. And we'll explain that on future shows.
Because who doesn't want a pet T-Rex?
Hey, they're very, very cool. They're very dino-y.
They're very steezy, aren't they?
They're very steezy birds.
Very steezy birds.
All right, so now why don't we thank you, and let's share our outro with people, or at least today's version of the outro of the show.
All right. Well, thanks for checking out Legends and Losers. Please subscribe on iTunes. Give us a legendary review. You can find us on facebook.com/groups/Legends and Losers, on Twitter @LegendsLosers, on email blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, and be sure to tell all your friends regardless of their legendary or loser status.
And we would like to thank Equity Directory, the invite-only network of entrepreneurs and startup talent exchanging work for equity.
HarperCollins, Play Bigger: How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets.
We would like to thank our dear friend Flip Collier for naming our show Legends and Losers. Thanks, Flip.
Flip, you're awesome. And One Life Fully Lived, Tim Rhodes' company.
We'd also like to thank Brian Behrens for creating the logo and the brand of of Legends and Losers.
Thank you, Brian. It was an incredible logo. We love it.
And of course, we'd like to thank Marshall Amplifiers and the official drink of Legends and Losers, Jack Daniels. Without Jack, where would we all be?
Phenom People, the leader in talent relationship marketing.
I think we mentioned it, but we'll do it again. Spiro, the sales app for salespeople who like to make money.
And Dollar Beard Club.
Hey, man, grow a beard. All right, and we'll wrap today by sharing with you that today's show is, the information in today's podcast is provided to you for solely informational purposes. This oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network. All products contain nuts. Listen to the Ramones. Do not pour hot coffee on your crotch. Do not use plastic bags as children's toys. Support your local category designer. And hey, never fry bacon in the news. And
in the nude.
What did I say?
The news.
Well, then I fucked up. Never fry bacon in the news. What does that even mean? I don't know. Look it up. Google that, mother. Oh, I almost said something really bad. And hey, we would like to apologize to Bill McDermott, CEO of SAP. Sorry, Bill, we ran out of time for you on today's show.
Sorry, Bill.
That's it. Thanks for tuning into Legends and Losers. We'll see you on episode 1. Be legendary.